Hello everyone. So today we're looking at a situation so monumentally stupid and horrific that it feels like we're living in a parody of a dystopian novel written by someone who has a grudge against humanity. We're talking about the shooting today in Minneapolis at 34th and Portland. If you haven't seen the news or if you've been blissfully unaware of the absolute grease fire currently happening on our streets, ICE Immigration and Customs Enforcement has managed to turn a residential neighborhood into a scene that makes GTA look like a peaceful Sunday brunch. The word terrorism is being thrown around a lot right now. Usually that's a word reserved for people who live in caves or plan world-ending schemes in comic books. But today a lot of people are looking at the federal government and realizing that the definition might actually fit. We're going to look at the facts of this Minneapolis disaster, the absolute clown show of an explanation given by the DHS, and whether or not ICE has officially graduated from a law enforcement agency to a state-sponsored terrorist organization. This is a total mess, so let's get into it. Let's start with what actually happened before the government's PR team had a chance to polish the turd. This morning, as part of Operation Secure Homeland, which is a name that sounds like it was focus grouped by people who think The Purge was a documentary, ICE agents descended on South Minneapolis. We aren't talking about a couple of guys in windbreakers, we're talking about a full-on paramilitary invasion. Masked men, unmarked vans, rifles, the whole "I'm a very tough boy" starter pack. In the middle of this, a 37-year-old woman who was a US citizen was in her car. According to the official DHS statement, she weaponized her SUV. They claim she tried to ram them like it was a demolition derby, and the agent had no choice but to fire in self-defense. It's the classic "I feared for my life" script that we've heard 1,000 times before. But then, the internet happened. Multiple people filmed this from their windows, and the footage is about as clear as it gets. You don't see a car ramming into anyone, you see a car trying to drive away from a group of masked men who look like they're about to commit a heist. You see an agent literally step in front of a moving car, placing himself in danger intentionally, and then fire multiple rounds directly through the windshield into her face. This wasn't self-defense. This was a guy with a badge and a power trip deciding that a woman trying to flee a chaotic situation was a valid target for an execution. It's a complete and utter disaster of basic procedure, and the fact that they're trying to lie about it when the footage is right there is just insulting to anyone with a functioning brain. Now let's address the elephant in the room, the word terrorism. People get very uncomfortable when you apply that word to a government agency, but let's stop huffing the copium for a second and look at the actual dictionary. The textbook definition of terrorism is the unlawful use of violence and intimidation, especially against civilians, in the pursuit of political aims. Let's check the boxes here. Is this political? Well, the mass deportation surge is the single biggest political tool of the current administration. It's a show of force meant to fulfill a campaign promise. Is it violence against civilians? A woman is dead in the residential street. Is it meant to intimidate? This is the core of it. When you send thousands of agents into a city to snatch people up in unmarked vans, you aren't just enforcing the law. You are creating a climate of absolute bone-chilling fear. If your goal is to make an entire demographic of people so terrified that they stop going to work, stop going to the hospital, and stop living their lives, you are using terror as a tool. It's not a border security issue when it's happening in Minnesota. It's a psychological warfare campaign against a community. If a group of guys in masks did this without a government patch, we'd be calling for the National Guard. But because they have a DHS logo, we're supposed to treat it like a normal Tuesday. It's a joke. A very bad, very unfunny joke. But the part that makes my brain leak out of my ears is what happened after the shooting. Within 2 hours before the body was probably even cold, the DHS spokesperson, Tricia McLaughlin, comes out and calls the victim a domestic terrorist. She didn't have a trial, she didn't have a weapon, she was a woman in a car. But the government's response was to label her as a terrorist to justify why they put a bullet in her head. It is the most pathetic, cowardly form of gaslighting I have ever seen. It's a get out of jail free card. If the government can just point at anyone they kill and scream terrorist, then they never have to answer for anything. It's a complete collapse of the rule of law. They're using the label to strip this woman of her humanity and her rights. And it's not just her. They're using this rhetoric to silence anyone who speaks out. If you protest the shooting, are you an accomplice to terror? If you film the agents, are you obstructing a counter-terrorist operation? They're slowly turning the entire legal system into a shield for their own incompetence and violence. It's disgusting, and it's being done with our tax dollars. Let's look at the optics here. These agents don't look like police. They look like they're about to raid a compound in a war zone. They wear olive drab, they wear masks, and they don't even have name tags. Why the masks? If you're a hero enforcing the law, why are you hiding your face like you're in a slasher movie? The answer is simple. Anonymity breeds impunity. When you can't be identified, you can do whatever you want. You can fire into a windshield, hop back into an unmarked van, and disappear into the night. The mayor of Minneapolis is basically having a mental breakdown over this. He's telling the feds to leave because they're causing chaos, when the local government, the people actually responsible for the city, says that a federal agency is a primary threat to peace. You know the system is fundamentally broken. It's an occupying force. They don't coordinate with the local cops. They don't respect local sanctuary laws. They just roll in, break stuff, kill people, and then they leave the local community to clean up the blood and the trauma. It's a total circus of arrogance. This situation is reaching levels of pure garbage that I didn't think were possible. They're treating American streets like a free fire zone, and the result isn't safety, it's the opposite. The city is currently a powder keg. People are hitting the streets, and for the first time we're seeing regular citizens forming defense networks. This is what happens when you govern by fear. People eventually stop being afraid and start being angry. ICE has managed to radicalize an entire population against them. Not because the population loves illegal immigration, but because the population hates seeing their neighbors executed in broad daylight by masked men who refuse to follow the law. It's a massive L for everyone involved. It's an L for the DHS, it's an L for the city, and it's a tragedy for a family that has to bury a 37-year-old woman because some agent wanted to play John Wick on his morning shift. So where do we go from here? The DHS is doubling down. They aren't apologizing, they aren't promising an investigation, they're just leaning harder into the terrorist narrative. They're trying to convince us that the woman in the SUV was a threat, and the guys with the rifles and the unmarked vans are the protectors. It's the ultimate, who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes situation. We have the footage. We have the witness statements. We have the local police distancing themselves from the feds. All the evidence points to a massive abuse of power, but the government is banking on the fact that if they say the word terrorist enough times, people will just look the other way. Well, it's not working. The internet doesn't forget, and the footage isn't going away. This is a turning point. If we accept that a federal agency can kill a citizen and then label them as a terrorist to avoid accountability, then we don't have a country anymore. We have a regime. At the end of the day, this is just a heartbreakingly stupid situation. A woman is dead, a city is on fire, and the people responsible are acting like they deserve a medal. If ICE agents want to prove that they are a terrorist organization, maybe they should stop using the tactics of one. Maybe stop the unmarked vans. Maybe stop the masks. Maybe stop shooting people in the face in a residential neighborhood. It's a pretty low bar, but apparently it's still too high for them to clear. I want to hear from you guys. Is this terrorist label too far, or is it the only thing that actually fits at this point? Let me know in the comments. Keep it civil, try not to get yourselves on a watch list, and just try to stay safe out there, especially if you're in Minneapolis. That's about it. This situation is a complete dumpster fire, and I'm sure it's only going to get worse before it gets better. I'll see you in the next one.